Today I'm going to be profiling a station that's a little bit different. See, normally I like to cover stations with a lot of history because, well, there's a lot to say about them. Today's station is not one that has a lot of history, and in fact it's been open less than 2 years. Today we're going to be taking a look at Woolwich. Woolwich Station in southeast London is on the Elizabeth line. Most Elizabeth line stations are add-ons to existing stations. Now, okay, that's no small thing. The amount of work needed to build something like Bond Street Elizabeth line is effectively no different from building an entirely new station. But Woolwich is entirely standalone. It's easy walking distance from Woolwich Arsenal on National Rail and the Docklands Light Railway, but it isn't a true interchange. It's also not too far from the ferry pier, and I think everyone in London should ride the ferry at least once, because it's great. Woolwich Station was actually a late addition to plans for the Elizabeth line. The trains would originally just zip through here on their journey between Custom House and Abbey Wood. There was going to be a ventilation shaft here, what every neighbourhood needs. However, there were calls for a station from two main quarters, both of whom would put some money into the pot to get it built. One was Greenwich Council, under whose jurisdiction Woolwich falls. Before the Elizabeth line came along, the rail connections were via National Rail to London Bridge and via the DLR into, well, the Docklands and Bank in the City of London. Neither of these are bad services by any means, but Woolwich Arsenal, the most central station, could not cope with the numbers of passengers. When it comes down to it, the DLR is a light railway. It's not designed for large numbers of passengers. The Elizabeth line, on the other hand, offers a fast, direct and high-capacity service to not only the Docklands and the City, but the West End and Heathrow Airport. And it could make Woolwich a highly desirable place to live, and that's what developer Berkeley Homes were counting on. Woolwich's main industry for over 200 years was the Royal Arsenal, where munitions were developed and manufactured. The scale of the arsenal was truly enormous. It supplied the British Army through the Napoleonic Wars and 2 World Wars. It provided employment for workers all over South and East London. The Arsenal Football Club began as a works team. The lands it owned were so extensive that when operations were scaled back, an entire town was built on just part of the vacated land, Thamesmead. The Royal Ordnance Factory eventually closed in 1967. As you might expect with the loss of such a major employer, this led to an economic and population decline in the town. However, the loss of the arsenal wasn't bad for everyone. It left a huge number of listed buildings unoccupied, and these form part of a major new development as part of the London plan. The riverside area will, when completed, have more than 5,400 new homes, as well as hotel, commercial and retail space and cultural centres. The station directly serves this area, so you can see why Berkeley Homes, the company behind the new flats, might rub their hands with glee at the prospect of an Elizabeth line connection. So this station had to serve a different purpose from the others. It was to be a focal point for the area, a driver of development. Its location serves an interesting purpose. For all the Royal Arsenal was the biggest local employer, as a military establishment it had to be separate from the town. Obviously a lot of what went on there was secret, at least until it hit the enemy in the face. It was an enormous purpose-built facility. It does not fit into its surroundings, is what I'm getting at. The location of the station puts it more or less on the boundary between the arsenal and the town. The space in front of it forms a public square. The idea here is to use the station and its surrounding as a link between the two areas, to integrate them. The station was designed by Weston Williamson Plus Partners. It's built in a large concrete box due to the local soil, consisting of thanet sand, a wet and, well, sandy material that's very difficult to dig through. The station must be firmly shored up to avoid subsidence and water ingress problems. There's one wide central platform serving lines in both directions. There are escalators leading to an entrance on Dial Arch Square. Materials used, as well as concrete, include brick, glass, steel, and bronze, designed to be practical but also aesthetically pleasing. The station incorporates a number of design elements that call back to the area's history. The use of bronze calls back to the casting of cannons. The pattern cast into the bronze is meant to resemble rifling in the style known as the Woolwich system. See if you can guess where that was invented. The perforations in the cladding form a pattern resembling the Britannia and Lion symbols, recalling the commemorative coins struck for fallen soldiers in the Great War. The station is designed to be kind of stocky in structure, like the low but well-built structures of the arsenal itself. This is to reflect those buildings, but also not to overwhelm them. The pillars at platform level bear the colours of the Royal Engineers and the Royal Artillery, both of whom were based at Woolwich. There is much use of natural light in the entrance hall, which is a common feature of TfL stations and has been since long before TfL even existed. But all this is conceptual. How does all this work in practice? The answer is, a lot of the time, that it doesn't. As I said, one of the parties paying for this was Greenwich Council, but they found themselves somewhat financially embarrassed. In fact, I understand they still haven't paid off their share. The station was built on the cheap, and because of this, and because of its late addition to the plans, it compromises on a lot of things. While it's close to Woolwich Arsenal Station, it has no direct connection. And unlike most core stations, it has only one exit. At rush hour, this has real difficulty coping with the number of passengers. And this problem is set to get worse as development continues and more people move to the area. The problem is that the Elizabeth line not only relieves pressure on existing lines, but it attracts new passengers who might not otherwise have taken the train. According to recent figures, released in January by TfL, Woolwich saw 11.5 million passengers last year, which is a lot by any standards. Cheaping out on stations is never a good idea, especially when your line is specifically designed for high capacity. And with a station like this, rebuilding isn't really an option, at least not so soon after opening and in an area with so many listed buildings. I fear the people of Woolwich are going to have to put up with it for now, and TfL are going to have to do what they can. You might say they've shot themselves through the foot. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please do click the like button and consider subscribing for more. I would like, as always, to thank my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon and here on YouTube for your always generous support. You are the second entrance to my overcrowded station. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.